Something stunning happened during Kash Patel's confirmation hearing to lead the FBI. Senator Chris Coons asked Patel the simplest, most central question of all: who does the FBI serve? The correct answer is obvious. The FBI serves the Constitution and the American people, not the White House, not a president, not a political party. Yet Patel flunked that question.
I'm speaking today on why I will vote against Kash Patel as the nominee to be director of the FBI. The FBI, as my colleagues have spoken to at length, is one of the world's most important, powerful, and respected law enforcement agencies. And the tens of thousands of agents who serve us all across our nation are a key bulwark against terrorism, against extremism, against crimes that range from the theft of intellectual property to interstate gangs that carry out human trafficking or murder for hire. The FBI is an absolutely critical part of our nation's security, and it rests on trust. It rests on having an independent leader. Back to the dark days of J. Edgar Hoover being a politically connected and compromised FBI leader, in the decades since his tenure ended, we have engaged in a disciplined, balanced, bipartisan process to confirm FBI directors for long terms, 10-year terms. And I have voted for Republican nominees put forward by Republican presidents. We need, as director of the FBI, someone who will stand up for the men and women of this incredible law enforcement agency. And in his testimony before this committee and in his comments and actions before coming in front of this committee, Kash Patel has shown that he is not that leader. He is already actively undermining the bureau he seeks to lead. As someone who is the co-chair of the Law Enforcement Caucus and who spent years leading, supervising, responsible for the second largest law enforcement agency in my state, I see in Mr. Patel an alarming willingness to do the bidding of a vengeful White House. As you heard from my colleague, Senator Durbin, whistleblowers are alleging that he has already helped orchestrate the purge of the most senior leadership of the FBI, as well as those agents who were simply doing their job as assigned to them to carry out January 6th investigations. This purge is only the start of what I fear is about to come. The FBI has demanded that, the administration has demanded that the FBI turn over a list of its newest recruits and employees, has pushed out the head of the Washington field office and other top leadership, and is giving roles to folks who lack the relevant professional experience. The FBI needs independence, but Mr. Patel told me when I asked him that he believes the FBI works for the White House. I asked that same question of several other recent nominees, and they gave the correct answer, that federal law enforcement, whether the Department of Justice or the FBI, works for the Constitution and the American people. The FBI doesn't work for the White House. It works for all of us. Attorney General Pam Bondi got that question right. Todd Blanche and Gail Slater got that question right in their hearing yesterday. How is it that Kash Patel flunked that easiest and most central question? Not just to whom do you report, but for whom do you serve? As I said, we've seen what a dark chapter can be when the FBI is led by someone who is politically connected and by whom he politically corrupts the goals and purpose of the FBI, and I fear that we are heading into one of those chapters again. As I questioned him during his confirmation, I asked Mr. Patel if he, like his predecessors, would be willing to resign rather than take an unconstitutional or illegal action if ordered by the president. He refused to answer that question. I asked him if he would resign if President Trump asked him to go after a political enemy, and he refused to answer that question. I asked him if he would resign if the president asked him to block an investigation due to political considerations, and he refused to answer. These are questions that I asked of Directors Comey and Wray, and that they answered. If Patel refuses to answer these simple questions, questions that I think are rooted in recent developments and in his repeated public statements, questions that his predecessors have answered clearly, forcefully, and appropriately, how can we trust him to lead the FBI? I implore my Republican colleagues to reconsider the step I believe they are about to take to confirm this man to lead one of our most important elements of our law enforcement community. Around the world, our security depends on trust and reliability, and the national security role of the FBI director, the ways in which our FBI is critical to the work of our intelligence community and our military and others overseas as they work to keep us safe, cannot be overlooked. The men and women of the FBI deserve better than Kash Patel. To lead an agency whose watchwords are fidelity, bravery, and integrity, we need someone who has demonstrated their commitment to all three. Americans deserve better than Kash Patel. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
He flunked the most basic question a director of the FBI should be able to answer. Who does the FBI serve? When Senator Chris Coons asked Kash Patel that simple, central question, the answer, or the refusal to answer, should make every American sit up. The FBI is not a political tool. It exists to protect the Constitution, to keep people safe, and to enforce the law impartially. If the person chosen to run it can't say that plainly, that's a huge problem for all of us. The FBI handles some of the heaviest responsibilities in government: counterterrorism, counterintelligence, major criminal investigations, protecting elections, and fighting corruption. Those jobs depend on public trust. When that trust is broken or appears shaky, the whole system becomes less effective. Agents need to be able to do their jobs without fear that their work will be twisted into a political weapon. Citizens need to know that investigations are run on evidence, not on who's in the White House. So why did Coons press Patel so hard? Part of it is principle. The director should unequivocally say the FBI serves the Constitution and the American people, not a president. But there's also real-world danger behind the question. If the director bends to political pressure, investigations can be blocked or launched for the wrong reasons. Evidence can be ignored when it points one way and amplified when it points the other. People who speak up inside the Bureau could be punished. Important cases, including those involving threats to the country, could be compromised. Coons dug into harder, specific concerns. He asked whether Patel would commit to resigning rather than carrying out an unconstitutional or illegal order. That's not a theoretical question. Previous directors answered that clearly because it sets a boundary. No one should follow orders that break the law. Patel refused to make that promise. He also refused to say whether he would step down if ordered to go after a political enemy or if asked to stop an investigation for political reasons. Silence in that moment is meaningful. It doesn't reassure agents, it doesn't reassure judges, and it doesn't reassure the public. There's history here that matters. The FBI once had a director who used the Bureau politically in ways this country later called abuses. After that era, both parties moved toward a system that protects the FBI's independence, long terms for directors, bipartisan confirmations, and norms that separate law enforcement from short-term political goals. Those norms are fragile. If a new director comes in without a commitment to them, the danger isn't just to political rivals, it's to everyday people who expect the law to be applied fairly. Think about how this looks on the ground. An agent investigating a corporate fraud case needs to trust that promotions and assignments won't depend on whether a target is politically useful. A prosecutor working on a public corruption case needs to know evidence, not politics, will decide the outcome. If senior leaders can be purged because their work inconveniences powerful people, others will self-censor or leave. You end up with fewer experienced investigators tackling the most important threats. That loss of institutional knowledge weakens national security and public safety. Coons also raised alarms about reports of internal purges, allegations that people involved in January 6th investigations and other sensitive probes were pushed out. If those reports are true, they're not internal personnel matters only. They're a signal that investigations could be shaped by politics. When whistleblowers come forward, they're often the first warning. The proper response from leaders is transparency, documents, timelines, and a willingness to allow independent review. Vague denials and refusals to answer won't cut it. What should responsible leadership look like in this moment? First, a director nominee should plainly state that the FBI answers to the Constitution and the people, and that he will refuse any illegal order and resign rather than carry it out. Second, nominees should support protections for career staff and whistleblowers so nobody fears retaliation for doing their jobs. Third, Congress and oversight bodies should insist on documentary evidence for claims, access logs, memos, and clear sequences of events rather than take talking points at face value. Fourth, the public should expect and demand independent reviews by inspectors general when serious allegations surface. This is not partisan theater. Senator Coons pointed out that he has voted for Republican nominees before. The point is that the job requires independence above party. The director's role is to ensure the Bureau can pursue threats without political interference. If that wall falls, investigations and prosecutions risk becoming tools of political revenge. That undermines the rule of law and weakens protections that all Americans rely on, regardless of their politics. At the personal level, this matters because institutions that are meant to be neutral protect everyone. When law enforcement becomes partisan, ordinary folks lose confidence, and when confidence collapses, cooperation drops. Tips dry up, witnesses become afraid. The most basic things that keep communities safe get harder to do. So what can you do? Talk to your senator. Ask them whether a nominee will commit in writing to resign rather than follow an illegal order, and whether they will protect career officials who raise alarms. Demand that oversight be document-driven and independent. Pay attention when confirmation hearings focus less on principles and more on posture. The choices made in Washington shape how accountable and fair our institutions remain. If you found this unpacking useful, share it with someone who assumes the FBI is above politics. Drop a comment. Do you think the FBI should be required to pledge to resign rather than obey an illegal order? Hit subscribe if you want more clear explainers that go behind the clips and show why these hearings matter for everyday people.